Can I start, ma'am?
Yes.
Hello everyone, myself Jatin Varu. Today I am going to present a presentation on cultural study. My topic is that beyond the borders, the global imprint on Indian culture practice. Under this title, we are going to show the influence of globalization and global culture on Indian culture. The hypothesis of my presentation: Indian culture practices enriched by the global influence reflect the dynamic process of the cultural exchange, blending a local tradition with the foreign elements to create a unique yet globally resonant identity. The research question of this presentation: what role does the cultural exchange play in shaping the Indian language, literature, art, and architecture? These are my personal information. Table of content. We are going to start with the introduction of cultural study. Cultural study, an interdisciplinary field that examine how social institutions shape the culture. Origin is began in Britain, the late 1950s, and later spread in countries like United States, Australia. Key institution, Central Contemporary Cultural Study at the University of Birmingham, founded in 1960, but now it's widely taught in many universities. Influential scholar Richard Hogarth, Stuart Hall, and Raymond Williams played a major role in developing this field. Academic growth, now well-established field taught in many universities. Influence has implicated areas like sociology, anthropology, history, literary criticism, philosophy, and criticism. Main focus on examining the role of race, class, gender, and ethnicity of how cultural knowledge produced the understood. 5 types of cultural study: Britain structural cultural materialism, new historicism, American multiculturalism, postmodernism, and popular culture, post-colonial study. The 4 goals of cultural study: the first one is cultural study goes beyond the subject, is not stuck on any particular subject, but is break the boundaries of any particular to blind with one culture to another culture. Cultural study care about the social issues and fairness. It's also focused on the social issues like feminism, racism, and women empowerment. Culture study does not separate high and low culture. Culture study has no any biasness of high and low culture. It's look similar with literature and cinema. Culture study look at how cultural things are made. Culture study is just not subject of what, when, and why. It what, where, and when. It's also focused on why and how. Historical background of cultural exchange in India. The first one is Asian influence. The Indian-Asian traders' diplomatic relations with Persia, Greek, and China lead to a cultural exchange, implementing Indian art, science, and philosophy. For instance, Greek spectacular techniques influenced the Gandhara art, while Chinese travels like Shen Zhong documented early Buddhist practice in India. Now we know about the Buddhism is a important religion in India. The British influence on language. English became a widely used influencing education, administrative, and legal system. It remains an official language and common medium to communicate in India. Custom and culture. British colonizers introduced a Western custom, clothing, and lifestyle, changed some of which were integrated into Indian society, particularly among the urban elite. Governance. British rule established a new laws, administrative structure, and governance system. Education system. Western style education was introduced with emphasis English literature, science, and Western ideas, changing the traditional education system and implementing Indian intellectual culture. Indian culture practices influenced by other culture. Persian influence. When Muslim rulers come to India, Persian culture started influencing the country. Persian became the language used to a court official document. Persian poetry and literature became popular, shaping the way people wrote and communicated. Mughal influence. The Mughal brought a new art, architecture, food, blending a Persian, Islamic, and Indian style. While fusion can be seen in famous places like Taj Mahal and Mughal gardens, the Mughal ruler encouraged the religious tolerance and supported the art, which helped to create a unique Indo-Islamic culture. British influence. When the British colonized India, they brought a Western education, the English language, the new legal system. This change had big impact on Indian society. Fusion of flavor. Mughal influence. The diverse influence. Mughal cuisine in India was a mix of Persian, Indian, and Central Islamic flavors, Asian flavors. Royal kitchen, both vegetarian and non-vegetarian dishes were prepared with lots of ghee, spices, and nuts. Some popular vegetable dishes like vegetarian dishes like including khichdi and jardin biranj type of fish. Breads and dessert include naan chapati and in dessert milk with ghee and sugar. Fruit in cultivation, Imperial Akbar promote the growing of fruits like mangoes and pomegranates. British influence on Indian food, elaborated meals. The British had long meal schedule, including an early breakfast. It's called a chota hazir, regular breakfast. It's called as a bada hazir, lunch, as a tiffin, dinner, and super with snacks and drinks throughout the day. Large and varied meals. Meals were large and had many different food. Breakfast including dishes like crop sticks and omelets, while dinner had meat like beef, mutton, chicken, and game birds with vegetables and side dishes. Popular drinks in as like a wine, champagne, and iced coffee. Anglo-Indian dishes. The British created a new style of cooking by mixing Indian ingredients with a European recipe, creating a dishes that satisfied their taste while keeping their identity as a rule. How globalization impact on Indian food. Fast food popularity. Big global food chain like McDonald's and KFC have opened in India, offering a familiar food that were also adjusted to Indian state taste. This trend has made fast food more popular, especially with young people, leading to change the traditional eating habits. Change in farming. Indian farmer now growing more commercial crops like wheat and cotton to sell internationally, moving away from traditional varied farming. This shift partly to partly due to a global trade policy and laws that encourage the growing cash crop export. Packaged food. More processed and packaged food from other countries are now available, and people are eating less traditional food. This change, especially in cities, has led to health problems like obesity and diabetes. Impact on food culture. Western style fast food and dining are becoming more common, especially among the younger generation. This trend can sometimes push traditional Indian food aside and change what people prefer to eat. As Divya mentioned during her presentation, some country food like Japanese sushi, Italian pizza, and Chinese momos and Manchurian are more familiar in India, and it's become a more selling dishes in India also. The impact on language and literature. Arabic influence. Arabic entered through the religion after Islamic arrived in 17th century. Arabic words like Jannat and Din. Jannat now is more familiar in our normal language also. The Persian influence, the Persian words like namaz and roza, they both are more familiar in our daily life routine also. Urdu influence. Urdu combined Hindi structure with Persian and Arabic vocabulary, creating a language rich in poetry and experience. English influence on Indian language and literature. The role of English in colonial India. English became the main language for administration and education under British rule. It was given higher status than local language. Impact on literature. English introduced modern ideas and reshaped the Indian literature. Writers used to English to improve their native language and creates a new lifestyle. In colonial India, we find the writers wrote their native story in English to combine the local and global culture in one text. Influence on education. Learning English was seen as essentially for progress and success. It created a gap between English-speaking elites and vernacular speakers. Bilingual society. English dominated intellectual and politics discussions while local language served religion needs. This caused both growth and tension in Indian society. Art and architect. Mughal influence. The combination of style. Mughal architect in India combines the Persian, Islamic, and Indian style, creating a unique architectural blend. Symmetry and geometry. Mughal buildings like a Taj Mahal, known for their symmetry and precise geometric layouts, which become a key influence of Indian architect. Distinct use of materials. Mughal used to white marble for high status areas and red stone for secondary areas, reflecting the social hierarchy. This contrast between popular in later in Indian buildings. Garden layouts. As you all know about the Mughals came with the idea of garden. Garden is a key theme of their buildings. The Charbagh four-part garden style inspired by the idea of paradise was introduced by the Mughals and adapted into a mountainous, scarred space along riverside in India. British influence on Indian art and architecture. European influence in architecture. Gothic and Victorian architecture style were introduced by British in 19th century, reflecting European aesthetic and ideals. Used in civic buildings. This style were used to important civic buildings such as a government office, railway station, and educational institutions, showcasing British power and modernization. Adaptation of climate. To suit the Indian climate, some features were modified, like using verandas and high ceiling for better ventilation. Legacy and modern India. These buildings continue to stand out the heritage site in Mumbai and Kolkata, blending the historical British influence with Indian Urdu identity. Impact on music and dance. Pre-colonial era. Indian music was primarily dominated by classical traditions such as Hindustani and Carnatic music. These traditions were deeply rooted in religious and country practice. Colonial influence. The arrival of British colonial rule brought a Western classic music to India primarily through the churches, schools, and military bands. Western instruments like a piano, violin, and guitar were introduced and gradually adopted in Indian music, Bollywood, and popular music. The rise of Indian film industry in the 20th century played a significant role in building Indian and Western music. Composer like R.D. Bumran and A.R. Rahman integrated Western genres such as jazz, rock, and electronic music into Indian cinema. Globalization and modern trends. Post-independence globalization further faculties the exchange of musical style. Western pop, rock, hip-hop genre have heavily influenced the contemporary Indian music. In conclusion, we find how the globalization and global culture have shaped our Indian music in a music and dance, on a language, architecture, art. These are my references. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask.
Apart from this, can you identify any other elements that are influenced by global culture?
Apart from these, we find in a wedding style, in education, in cinema also, and in food also, as Divya mentioned during her presentation. So these areas are mainly influenced by the globalization and global culture in India.
My question is that in your presentation, you primarily focus on the influence of Mughal Empire and the British Empire. Is there any specific reason to emphasize this two?
As you all know about the history of India, Mughals and Britishers were ruled on us more than 200 years, and most of things by influence of these two empires in India, like Mughals and Britishers, we find many architecture on Mughals, like a Taj Mahal, Lal Killa also, and in influence now we all know about the British influence. We all know about their education system. Now we all used to educate with ourselves in a smart board, in computer and smartphone also. The Britisher and Mughal, these two empires mostly influence our Indian culture. Is the specific reason of these two empires. Thank you.